to Slow Medicine Radio. Our host is integrative medicine Dr. Michael Finkelstein. Michael offers medical advice from a holistic paradigm, including both medical and metaphysical philosophies from the full spectrum of human experience. Slow Medicine Radio offers fresh ideas on how to attain a state of wellness that seems distant given the limitations of today's medical paradigm. It introduces you to thought leaders who connect the dots between theory and practice, examining health from a broad perspective with regards to medical diagnoses, conventional and alternative therapies, healthcare policy, and related topics that warrant further thought and discussion. Slow Medicine Radio does not prescribe to take this or do that. Instead, it offers an open-minded, intelligent, and practical approach to living, resulting in greater health individually and collectively. Here is Dr. Michael Finkelstein, the founder of Sunraven, the home of slow medicine in Bedford, New York.
Welcome to Slow Medicine Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Finkelstein, and we're here every Monday at 5 o'clock Eastern on 1460 AM, WVOX.com as well, for you to listen and hear a conversation in general about your health and a way and a perspective of understanding health that goes beyond the medical establishment's, what I would say, limited view, which is that health is primarily what happens in your body. To me, health is something where our body often reflects what's going on for us and may be quite symptomatic, but the pursuit of health really requires an understanding of other aspects of our life, in particular what that body has a relationship to, other people, the planet, our own personal thoughts and experiences, and even the question about our life's purpose. And this is what defines slow medicine and the approach, which is to weave these things together. As a physician practicing for many years, when I stuck primarily with the physical body, I only got so far. It's this conversation that I found has really helped people take it to the next level and, for sure, improve the quality of their body's experience, but to integrate that into something much greater, which is a greater state of well-being, the experience of living, that I think is really what we're all after. This program is on every Monday for an hour. I often invite friends and guests, colleagues, and invite you who are listening to call in. The number is 914-636-0110 to enter the conversation, to share your thoughts and your questions so that we could together process this. In fact, one of the important parts of slow medicine is the aspect of community, and that's why I'm feeling so grateful to WVOX for providing me with this opportunity, and John Iannuzzi and Don Stevens, who are behind the glass and helping me week to week to really make this show possible. So thank you also for listening. Today, I have a good friend who's going to be my guest, and we're going to talk about something that you might not think about as a first line of approach to health. It's your dreams. So it goes on in the middle of the night that you often look at maybe as somewhat entertaining or perhaps just frightening without really seeing how that might connect to your greater state of health. But my guest, Warren Falcon, who has taught me a lot over time, has got a background not just in sort of this understanding of human psychology, but in particular some of the ways that psychologists, particularly Carl Jung and others, have really looked at our other layers of consciousness, our subconscious and unconscious mind, to really explore the full spectrum of human existence. Warren works and practices, lives in New York City, but he's a frequent visitor to Sunraven, where he leads workshops in dream weaving, we call it, where we weave together the aspect of the dream world into our day-to-day existence. His background includes really studying a great breadth of psychology. He is also the co-founder of the Learning for Life group, an interesting name, but clearly the subject that I know interests him, which is helping people live their life fully, which is an organization itself devoted to exploring the relationships we have while honoring the differences between conventional psychology and something perhaps a little bit more unique, sort of like slow medicine is in relationship to medicine. There's more to it, and I think most of us understand that. So, Warren, welcome to Slow Medicine Radio.
Thank you, Michael. It's good to be with you here as the light gets darker and darker outside today.
Yeah, we have more time for dreaming, I guess.
Yes, indeed. It's a perfect time to be talking right on the cusp there in the liminal space between daylight and darkness. Perfect time. We're right in it.
Well, so, I guess that gets me to that first question, which I would imagine maybe many people listening would have, which is so how do dreams relate to health?
That's a big, big question. I've been thinking about it all day and sort of feeling my way into it. The first thing that came to mind is the word health. Just, I like to play with words. Those who don't know me I like to look at the meaning of words and the root meanings of word. And health comes from a German word called heilig or heilig, which means wholeness. So right away, we're in the realm of psychology and mind and body, the whole tapestry, since we've been talking about dreaming and weaving. So health and wholeness, dreams and wholeness are related in the sense that we can look to our dreams, actively look to our dreams to find messages, signals, if you will, images which, if one slows down enough, as like slow medicine slows down, sits still, and sits with the dream, communes with the dream and the images, one can in time get missing pieces of the puzzle, if you will, that are provided in the dream imagery that can help complete oneself in one's own process toward healing and wholeness. Now, that's kind of a mouthful. You might want to tease it apart with me.
Well, so yes, let's do that. Let's think about it, though. So we dream naturally. Nobody necessarily needs to learn how to dream. As children dream. As adults, we have dreams whether we necessarily want them or not. Although some people, I know you'd say, lose practice with remembering dreams. And certainly the interpretation of the content of any dream that one does remember is another art and perhaps science, you could say. But the idea is that dreams sort of come naturally. And you could pass them off as incidental, as almost random events. I think a lot of people might. They might look to them and say, gee, that was sort of a fun dream or entertaining or a wishful dream or a fearful dream. But then end it there. Just say, okay, check. I'm aware of it and pay no mind to it. But you would say something different to this audience and to most people I know that you speak with, which is, no, there may be something really there. What's the background of, let's say, thoughtful people over eons of time, through human history? How have dreams evolved in terms of the appreciation for their significance?
Well, from ancient of days, at least if humans are 2 million years old in terms of the new brain kicking in, we've been dreaming. And Jung calls it the great ancestor within that each of us has and inherits. It's in our backbone. It's literally in our bodies, and it's in nature. So dreams are a part of nature, and when we're dreaming, nature is dreaming in and through us. So it puts us in touch with not only the beginning of the symbolic life, when the new brain woke up, or we woke up in the new brain, but it also puts us back in touch with nature. Jung says dreams are nature dreaming through us. So when we pay attention to our dreams, turn our attention toward the dreams, we're connecting to an accessible, albeit sometimes arcane or mysterious resource and energy which can communicate to us once we sit down and pay attention to it, ways in which we can live differently in terms of paying attention to parts of ourselves that want to be lived, that haven't been lived. They may be brought up in dreams, figuring into the wholeness aspect. Wholeness I call wholeness. Wholeness holds all these various opposites, if you will, that we are. And so dreams will often bring up aspects of self that we aren't aware of, or that we are aware of, but we don't want to be in touch with those parts. And so to work with the dreams is to connect with natural parts of self, which have been shoved down into the unconscious, if you will. So dreams will bring up these aspects to bring to our attention, if you will, those aspects that want to be integrated in some way into our conscious personality.
So can you perhaps share an example of a story? Let's say somebody, through the course of your career have spoken with that illustrates how perhaps even a cynical person, somebody who may doubt, how important a dream is, but maybe found something in a dream that opened doors for them or relieved them of a certain anxiety that they're experiencing in life.
Yes, what comes to mind immediately is one of my first clients that I worked with years ago came to me, and he had been referred by someone, and he knew that I worked with dreams. And the very first dream that he brought into the session it really revealed the kind of course of the work throughout our entire work together. And in Jungian psychology, and maybe in other psychologies, but I know in Jungian psychology, it's called the presenting dream, the first dream that comes into the session, which I pay attention to see what the dream may be saying in terms of what's going on in the client's unconscious, or what's being shown to me via his unconscious. This is a man. And where and how we may need to work. So I don't have really a plug-in kind of psychology. I have techniques, there's theories and systems and modalities to work with, but I don't know how I'm going to work until I sit face-to-face with this person. And we talk, of course, communicate and get together, get to know each other, and then also consult with the dream. So the first dream he brought in was that I'll kind of do the haiku version, that he was in a limousine, a large black limousine being driven by his father in the front seat, driving the car, and the mother was there in the front seat. And he was in the back seat with his two siblings, and they were driving him home to New York. And he grew up outside of the city, but close enough to get into it. And he's an adult male. And they park the car in front of his apartment building. He gets out, and there's how they plant trees on the sidewalks of the city. There's a little grate there, and there's a tree, not a giant tree, but this is a small enough tree. But the car door hits as he opens it, hits the tree, and he has to squeeze out. And while he's squeezing out of the car door, he notices that he looks down and he sees the grate, but he notices something in the grate, between the or beneath the little the grate. He could see through it, and he saw it was a little puppy. So he bent down and moved the grate, and he picked up a tiny little puppy that he thought was dead. And he recognized it instantly as a puppy that was given to him in waking life in his childhood. And he had forgotten it. And he realized that he had not taken care of the puppy. And it had died. And so he started to cry, and he began to apologize to the parents who were still there, saying, "So sorry, I forgot to take care of the puppy," and this kind of thing. Really, really upset and feeling great remorse. And lo and behold, though, he noticed that there was still some life in this puppy. Now, when I heard that, I was like, because I thought, boy, he's bringing me a dead puppy, and we'll talk about what the puppy and the dog means. But I said, thank God there's a little life in here. So right away I knew that we were going to be working with some instinctual aspect of himself. We're back to the animal, right? We're back to the animal. And that was pretty much the dream. He was relieved, but he didn't know how to take care of the puppy. And so I realized that when he was coming to me, that was our job together, was to take care of the puppy. So, he loves dogs. We talked about his associations to dogs. This is kind of Dream 101, or nuts and bolts of dreams is when you have a dream image. You just get your associations. Like if you dream of a pizza, well, what do I associate to pizza? Well, I think Friday night. I think football. It's round. You just make your associations, and everyone may have a different association to pizza. Well, the same with the dog, but he's very, very close to the dog, and he actually really did have this puppy. Now, he didn't neglect it, but there was something in him the little puppy represented, which is this instinctual side. And his associations to dogs were loyalty and fun and all of that. And at the same time, he was aware that there were also some dogs that were more feral and wild. So as the session unfolded, it turns out that he was often very, very passive, almost to the point of being masochistic, and was actually conjuring up, I use this kind of language, it felt magical to him that out in the world he had these often negative, violent, or angry, aggressive encounters with people. Strangers would come up to him on the street and just start screaming at them, if in some sense bearing their fangs at him. And, of course, he was a very, quote, spiritual, end of quote, man, and so he didn't think that that was a part of his spirituality. It was to be passive and gentle and all that, and yes, that's a part of spirituality. But as we worked through the years, we did take a long time to work, but we watched the course of his dreams as we worked with his own anger, which was deeply repressed, and sort of showing up in the outer world. As Jung said, that which you don't live consciously shows up to you. It shows up in your life as fate, meaning I used the word, I remembered it as you're doomed. It shows up as being doomed to live it as fate. But in this case, it's not a doom at all, except that you just have to do the work. So we began to work on his own anger, and I won't get into the details of that. But through the years, he would bring dreams in, and we could watch the course of the dogs in his dreams, and from little puppies to then there would be there would be wild dogs, there would be tame dogs, but and how healthy were they? So the day he brought in a dream with a very healthy dog. And not some little thing, although I've been around small little dogs I'm more terrified of than the larger dogs. They're very much in touch with their aggression quite often. But it was about getting in touch with assertiveness, aggression, and anger. And it began to manifest in his behavior in the world as he integrated it. In Jungian psychology, you'd call this part of his shadow, that which is down in there, that not consciously lived and even devalued, showing up in the outer world in really sometimes horrific ways. But his shadow work was to develop a conscious relationship to this side of the dog. He had a lot of puppy in him, and he had a lot of kind of tail between the legs kind of dog, wagging with head down, kind of snuffling along, But we really needed to, the dream was really indicating, and the further dreams indicated, working with the other feral aspects of the dog and of himself. And then to make it conscious that you're just not walking out of the streets and screaming and yelling at people, but have it in your aura, if you will, have access to it. So when you need to have a little guard dog or pit bull in your aura, that's consciously so, then it can serve you. Does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I think that in addition to making sense, it's just very interesting. I think. We could, of course, listen to other people's dreams and find the stories compelling, and hopefully, people we care about will be able to use tools like this for their own benefit. But for our own sake, for everyone who's listening, we all dream, and we could pass off a lot of our dreams as irrelevant, as I said earlier. But This is an example of if you bring a dream to somebody who can help you sort of navigate and interpret some of the features. It can be really quite fascinating. And in truth, not that we're all narcissists, but we all have this narcissistic quality that we find ourselves very interesting. And there's something healthy about that. In other words, we are interesting to ourselves because we do really need and benefit from paying attention to what it is that we're expressing and feeling. And a lot of what's missing from medicine, in my experience, is the preoccupation with the outer, the more obvious to the objective observer, and a little less of the personal that only can be expressed by the individual who's experiencing it. And dreams are one way, one language that individuals can be encouraged to develop and then share with a therapist like you to really make sense out of it and then bring it to life and then connect those dots.
Yeah.
So, I'd like to invite, if you're okay with this, Warren, callers to maybe share if they have like a aspect of your dream, but without, because the dreams, like you just shared, take to express the dream can take minutes, and then to interpret it can take even more. But one of the things I'd like to ask you about, and this is what I'd like maybe callers to consider, is if there's a person has a recurring dream, and there's an element in a dream. So my limited knowledge of this is that there's some significance to that. In other words, maybe we don't normally pay attention to every dream that comes around, but if something keeps coming up, maybe we've even had it over the course of our lives, there may be something to it. And so what I'd like to ask you about are, the dominant image of a dream. Let's say an unusual character like an elephant, or, sort of a weird colored object. Instead of a stop sign being red, it's purple, and so it's a feature that stands out that almost begs you to pay attention to it. And that maybe you can give us another example. We're going to take a break, but I want people who are listening to maybe call in, think about, is there an image? Is there something that keeps recurring? I just want to know what cats are about often. Or, you talked a little bit about dogs. Maybe something, other that I think is interesting way that we as a community collectively consider how dreams not only serve the individual, but sometimes when people share dreams with an audience, there's something in common that people are experiencing now. And certainly we know this as a society. We're all witness to certain current events. We're all having this living dream, if you will. And sometimes by sharing it and sort of asking questions about it, we not only understand it better, but we can actually feel better. We can integrate even shadows. This is a time where people frequently talk about the shadow having risen.
Young called it the golden shadow. I left that important word out. Right. There's gold in them, their shadows.
Yeah, so that there, even though we could look at it with some fright or we could be upset, there's also an opportunity. So let's talk about dreams as opportunity and the metaphors and the symbols sometimes that keep repeating. And if you have one of those, call us. The number is 914-636-0110. I'm speaking to Warren Falcon, who we call the Slow Medicine DreamWeaver. And if you'd like to speak to him and us right now, again, call us, 914-636-0110. We'll take a break, and we'll be back in a minute.
You're listening to Slow Medicine Radio. You can find out more about the show and the work of Dr. Michael Finkelstein by visiting his website, slowmedicinedoctor.com. Slow Medicine Radio is sponsored by the Slow Medicine Foundation, dedicated to providing community-centered experiential and reflective learning for individuals, families, and groups, offering educational programs, events, and resources, as well as insightful health evaluations with customized medical guidance. Dr. Finkelstein works with his wife, Robin Queen Finkelstein, at their farm, Sunraven, in Bedford, New York. And they invite you to visit and take advantage of this unique resource, including men's and women's groups and couples programs. If you think about it, much of what we experience when we don't feel well is a result of that fast world and how it affects us. Therefore, if fast is the disease, then slow is the medicine. Visit Sunraven, the home of slow medicine in Bedford, New York. Go to slowmedicinedoctor.com or call 914-218-3113. And thank you for tuning in Mondays at 5 p.m. right here on 1460 WVOX.
Welcome back to Slow Medicine Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Finkelstein, and I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, the Slow Medicine DreamWeaver, Warren Falcon, who works and practices, lives in New York City. He's from, you probably can tell by his accent, somewhere south of here. And I just so enjoy listening to you speak so freely about the symbols, the elements of the subconscious and the unconscious mind, and the imagery and the experience of living that really completes the picture of what happens to us on a day-to-day basis. And I think a lot of us also then, have questioned the idea of sleep even. Like, why do we actually need 8 hours a day? It's 1/3 of our lives potentially of, just to close our eyes and be unconscious. Part of the answer, of course, is our bodies need physical rest and time to restore. Our cellular function needs, the opportunity to clear out the garbage at night rather than everything just always being put into it and being assimilated. So there's the physical aspect of it. But what we also know happens during that period is that we wander off in our mind in a layer of consciousness that's somewhat fuzzy and not really our full functioning conscious mind, but another aspect of our existence that really enriches our life if we choose to pay attention to it. So I've through our conversations over the years, just found this has opened a lot of doors. And I know when people speak to you in our groups, when we have the events at Sunraven, especially when they come up and they share their dreams collectively, there's something very pleasant about it, and something I think leads people to feel, no, there's something else going on at night that is actually very valuable. It's not downtime. This is not wasted energy. And in fact, if I paid more attention to it, I could leverage that to really make my daytime waking hour life even more healthy, more whole.
Mm-hmm.
So, I asked the question and made the point before the break, which was that dreams often recur. And
yes.
What's the significance of that? Would you say, if there's a general answer to that question, or an example, again, perhaps of, a type of recurring dream, and how we look at a recurring dream maybe a little differently than we would, a one-off dream?
Well, recurring dreams are I call it Dream Central. There's different names from whatever it is that's dreaming in and through us, that mysterious but communicable source and resource we have. It communicates to us in recurring dreams. It's like really trying to get our attention. It's like again and again and again. I use the example of when there's a child, and they're tugging at your sleeve going, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, mommy," really trying to get your attention. So the recurring dreams are the unconscious underlining, underscoring, say, pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And so we then try to pay attention to see what's the quality of the dream, if it's something frightening or just mysterious or strange or any number of themes in the dream, to say, what is this really trying to communicate to me? Why do I need to pay attention to it? There were many recurring dreams, some that we've probably all had, is that in the dream that you're in a class that it's the last day, you didn't even know you had signed up for the course, and you have to take the final exam, or nakedness in the dream. Or one that I remember having was that I was in the wings of a stage, and I was, in a Shakespearean play, and I was the lead character, and I didn't even know I was in the play, and I didn't know my lines, and I was thrust out onto the stage. These kind of recurring dreams. Dreams can begin to recur even in childhood, and you can pay attention to your childhood dreams because those often will reveal to you in time, or if you pay attention to them with someone like me, or you sit and do your own dream work. Well, why were those early repetitive dreams so important, and what do they say about the rest of my life? And a lot of those early dreams that repeat sort of set forth in a general way the kind of theme, the kind of I'll use the word parentheses, that one's life will organize around the kind of issues or themes that, or to use Jungian psychology, the kind of what personal myth is showing up, what mythic themes that show up that this individual life is about. And there can be, of course, it's wide-ranging. The unconscious has a vast toolbox, if you will, or an image box to give us and convey to us these various images that tell us to pay attention to these particular recurring dreams.
It's, you mentioned a couple of things in this, got me thinking, one is the anxiety. One of the hallmarks of human life, I think, is that people tend to have varying degrees of anxiety. To me, dreams can provoke anxiety. In fact, often they do. There are the fantastical dreams, the dreams, that are wishful thinking and beautiful stories and, feel good. But for a large part of us, of the dreams that I hear, there's a quality of anxiety that's associated with the experience of the dream itself.
Yeah.
And, I want to maybe... This is going to be a little bit of a reach, but I'm going to go here with you because, one of the other things that I sort of left off in your introduction was your interest in the culture of Mexico.
Yeah.
And the reason that I'm bringing that up now is because I think, at least my experience, personal experience, not necessarily professional, but the root cause of my anxiety is the concerns about the end of life, death, the question about what happens after death. The question of it being disconnected, even unloved to some extent, but then also the issues of impermanence. We don't have enough time to heal wounds even. And so, but the Mexican culture, like many of the other cultures in the world, that are, might call indigenous, ancient, and quite spiritual, have a very different relationship to death.
Yes, indeed.
And so this is the stretch. I want to see if then dreams and anxiety and death can be woven together by you in some way to make some coherent sense of these, because a lot of people perhaps don't share their dreams because they don't even want to air the anxiety. They want to relive it in some way.
Yeah. Well, if you've been to Mexico or in Central America, they have their Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead celebrations, not just one day as it is here in the U.S. if anybody celebrates it, but it's an ongoing, 2 or 3 week celebration where one goes and sits on the graves of the dead and brings
interesting word, celebration, just to interject right here.
Exactly. Exactly. Because and this seems to be true. I was reading Jung yesterday, and he says our unconscious seems to assume that we are, one, not going to die, that just goes on and on and on, or is very, very comfortable with death, and that we don't end when we die. I mean, we go on, we go on, we go on. He says, well, we can prove that in some sense, him being a scientist, with valid data and empirical knowledge. Empirical data is another story, but we do know that the fact is that many, many dreams throughout the millennia seem to indicate that there seems to be an ongoing with life, or a life that continues after the physical death. So we can pay attention to these dreams because they are facts, and the fact is that that we do seem to go on, at least in the inner world, and so we pay attention to any kind of dream, but particularly death dreams, or having relationships with people who are deceased. So to go down to Mexico or Central America is really, it's kind of a magical time, and usually, we see skulls and crossbones and skeletons as horrific images because we do have an innate, I think the animal in us has an innate fear of death, if you will. But they have a wonderful woman called Catarina, and she walks along. She's dressed as a woman. She has a fancy hat on and a long frilly dress, and she's got an umbrella, I guess, to keep the sun off of her bones, and she's very much alive, and people have a kind of a loving, affectionate relationship to her. So to sit on the graves, to bring their favorite food, to laugh, to remember stories. I remember one night in Pátzcuaro, in the Lake Pátzcuaro. There's a big lake there in Mexico where I was went out to the island, was invited to stay with a Mexican family there, and go to their ancestral graves, and there were hundreds of people on this tiny little island, and it would be all night, and it was a little chilly there, even though it was down in the sort of the southern hemispheres, or the equinoctial, whatever the right word is, and so there would be lots of food, and yes, lots of drink, and lots of prayers and singing, and then people would sit on particular graves. I remember one guy kind of pounding. He'd had more than a few drinks and was a bit snockered, as we say, and he was pounding away on the grave saying, "Wake up down there." Apparently it was a father or a grandfather that said, "You are no good in life and you're no good you're in death. We need money." So you could really have a very dynamic relationship with the dead. Now, a comfort level with the underworld, if you will, and those who had passed on. A very living and vibrant and elaborately imaginative, because they do sand paintings in the streets and stuff, and of course the Day of the Dead, and those days, November, October, late October, early November, the veils are thin between the living and the dead, so they take advantage of that to renew relationships and to complain about, hey, we need some money.
Well, there's something very, quite relevant to that story and what you're just sharing in Slow Medicine, because the opposite of being able to actually play around the subject of death in a cemetery in a real sense, not, forcing yourself to do it, but this is part of the culture, so it's natural. It doesn't feel quite as scary and feels quite the opposite, like there's really, restored connections, is the relief of anxiety. And anxiety is the underpinning of the medical conditions of inflammation and almost all the other ailments that follow, the physical body ailments that follow that I used to attend to as a internal medicine doctor. I mean, it's the bread and butter of what I dealt with, which was this inflammatory process. And yes, there are physical causes of it. There's certain foods that one needs to pay attention to. There are other things that we, experience in life on the physical plane that matters. But there's this underlying 24-hour-a-day potential for us to feel anxious, which stimulates the sympathetic nervous system and floods us with all these hormones and neurochemicals that affect our body. One of this is this pervasive anxiety about, our lives ending or the lives of somebody close to us ending or, the threat around us, for all sorts of mortal harm. And while all of that is true, relevant, and would be painful, it's not to diminish the true experience of losing somebody or losing our own lives or parts of our lives. But the anxiety level often exceeds the reality and exists even when the reality is not going to happen today. So that creates a major potential for relief if one then can somehow grab hold of sort of a process that will help them sort of face this difficult situation, but in a way that's a little bit more playful. There's a light side to it, and also there's a lot of wisdom involved in it.
Yeah. This is a principle, certainly in psychology, of various approaches in psychology, and psychology grew out of medicine. It certainly sounds like a principle in medicine, too. Nothing gets better until it is what it is. Nothing changes until it is what it is. You have to get a diagnosis. You have to look at what's going on so that then one can take an appropriate action, get to know what it's conveying and communicate with it. And psychology will often turn toward that which frightens us. Now, you may not do it in the first session. It may take a little time. But to turn toward that which frightens gives us anxiety consciously and with someone with you, someone who's present with you, to contain, if you will, any terror, to say, well, okay, well, that's enough, or let's get a little bit of that and let's chew on this together and digest it. But it's a major, one of the most helpful things to do is to turn toward one's, say, like with the guy I was talking about who was not at all in touch with his rage and anger and aggression, and it didn't fit what was a spiritual or an ego ideal of being spiritual. Eventually turn toward the aggressive, the assertive, the angry, and then dialogue with it. And there's various ways to do so. In and out of therapy, one thing that I do try to teach my clients hopefully at the right time, there's no right or wrong time, but when they're ready to do it, is to say they've had a dream of something frightening, or of say, one frequent one is if someone's coming through the window, and I said, well, they're coming through the window because they need you, believe it or not. So let's have a dialogue. Can you have a dialogue with that aspect of self that's coming through the window? And,
Yeah, I found when you have shared those insights to help people reframe what looks like a literal, obvious experience, but reframe it such as, you could die in a dream, or somebody else could die in a dream, which would be sort of sad and maybe you could say bad news, but obviously you didn't die if you're waking up and you remember the dream. So what it almost, leads to then is, well, then how would I interpret it? Because it's not literal. And then the reframing goes to, well, maybe some aspect of you might have died. So even in the worst case scenario of death in a dream, not just an intruder, but, death in a dream, there's a way of saying, well, maybe an aspect of me is dying or is, evolving to the next level. And in fact, there's something very positive about that. And, the first reaction might be to resist it. But if we could stay with it, and this is part of what, you encourage, I've seen you work, is to help people then just pause, take a breath, and then look at it again with a slightly different lens with a question, like maybe what is that really reflecting? And then sometimes there's something very, very good coming out of that.
Yes, certainly. It's actually, those are real transformative dreams, and death is a transformation from one state to another. And death is never really death. When you say death, you also say rebirth. The archetype includes, it's not just one word, it in fact includes the whole life process with death or life or birth, development, maturity, decay, death, rebirth, and the cycle repeats. So when you say death, you also say rebirth. So when people have these dreams, I've certainly had them, I ask, well, who in you has died, or who in you needs to die? What parts need to go? When people come to me with suicidal ideation and stuff like that, I want to make sure that they're not going to do that kind of thing. But I say, well, which parts of you need to go?
Yeah.
Which parts once served and no longer serve? Which parts adapted to trauma, to whatever situation it might have been, have served their purpose and now need to go? One Jungian analyst, a guy named Dr. David Rosen, who's written a book called Transforming Depression, writes about his early suicide, near-suicide attempt, successful attempt as a teenager. And so he survived clearly because he wrote books, but he worked with a lot of people who have suicidal ideation and depression. And he said, well, he calls it egocide. He said, suicide means everything. You kill off the whole experiment. Jung called our lives experiments. You kill it off. For all the possibilities that could happen from living through. But we can certainly, quote, kill off in quotation marks. That's harsh language, but suicide is a form of killing off. So we can certainly see what parts need to go. And when I've worked with folks in this way and at the appropriate time, do a little guided imagination, a kind of hypnotic state if you want to, and say which parts need to go. And now you're standing over that part, looking at it, observing it, and see who will rise up out of the ashes, if you will. What will emerge from that part which has died? And it's really quite astounding what may emerge and who may emerge or what may emerge. It could be the dreams, the dream language will use anything, whether it's logical or not, to convey something. Like one client dreamed of a large skyscraper growing up out of the corpse, if you will, of the part that had died. And as we work the skyscraper image, well, we associate the skyscrapers, at least I do, I associate to, a massive ego, towering, and this guy's self-esteem was so low that the part that, quote, died or was, quote, killed off was replaced by something which was a compensation for the negative inflation, if you will, the negative idea of the self of not being anything and being worthless, to something which towers above the landscape and is seen. And we all are always impressed, either flying over or driving into New York City, as we look at these skyscrapers, and they literally scrape the sky. So it's about we're here, and we're in touch with our power. We're in touch with our abilities to have commerce in the world. So it was really an appropriate image that and apt, for this person. But some people, it just depends on the individual, and it's all. So then this is where curiosity. See, we think of therapy. Oh God, therapy. Do I have to talk about my parents? This kind of thing. But this is actually then as you said, I call it. There's a healthy narcissism, and we are interested in ourselves. We know the unhealthy narcissist. Usually, we can look at. Well, I won't even go there into current electoral things, but you're curious, because once you start to relate to the dreams, and the dreams really do communicate, you really start to have a dialogue and a relationship with the unconscious, then you're curiouser and curiouser. So no matter what the dream may throw at you, whether it scares the bejesus out of you or not, you say, well, let's just get curious. It's got your attention if it scared you. Mm-hmm. Or say it's an erotic dream, or you're a kid in a candy store and you can have everything, and in this dream you can eat everything you want there and not get sick. Let's get curious as to what's being conveyed here. So when this stuff shows up, even the frightening stuff is like, well, this is a chance for rebirth.
Well, so then this leads me, we have about 10 minutes left, to maybe talk to those who are listening to us about how one then learns to have that dialogue. To remember dreams is the first thing for a lot of people is sort of a challenge. And the other aspect of it is, okay, so when you do now remember a dream, is there a way to direct a dream? Is there a way to sort of like before you go to sleep say, gee, I'd love to, sort of get some insight into this, important question in my life? And is there a way to use dreams then and have a dialogue and even, not only be curious but ask questions and then over time do that? So those are two things that I'd love to hear your thoughts on.
So sort of practical ways to remember the dreams and then to then develop a relationship to them. A lot of people say they don't have dreams or they don't remember their dreams, and so there's some things you can do consciously, of course, is to go out and buy yourself a dream notebook, something to write in. I like to write nowadays. Folks have their gadgets in their hands and they can speak. I have a new client who literally records his dreams and then plugs it in, and the dreams print out in transcript. So I'm a dinosaur, but I like to hold my pen and my paper, whatever works. But to have something separate that's specifically for your dreams, you can put it by your bed. You can certainly do what you said, was just request as you go to bed and you're lying there, is that you would like to have remember your dreams and be able to write them down and therefore develop that relationship to that vast we'll call it library or museum, full of just so much wisdom that's beyond ourselves. We have access to that nightly, and, of course, through intuitions and those kinds of things in the daytime. And so to make your request, let them be made known. Some people put a little lavender, or so there are some things that supposedly enhance dreams. One practical thing for people who want to remember dreams is, I remember hearing someone say, well, drink a glass of water before you go to bed. So at some point you may have to get up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and oftentimes that's when you remember a dream. Now, the pain may be is that you have to then record the dream. That might be the facility, if you will, of having a recording device there, so that you don't have to kind of find pen or paper, or you grab your notebook while you're sleeping. But so once you begin to remember them, though, and in fact, I just had the second session with a brand new client, and I asked him in the first session to start paying attention to his dreams. And a week later, this week, he had 17 dreams, and he had told me, "Well, I don't dream." So his wife, who I worked with some time back, who really turned on to dream work, he went to his wife saying, Warren told me to watch my dreams. Now, this doesn't work with everybody, of course, and I've had all these dreams. She said, well, that's exactly what happened to me. Now, it may not happen with everyone, but quite often it does. Once you just turn your conscious attention toward the what we're calling the unconscious, I call it, really, it's the uber conscious, the super conscious. But it lies below the threshold of our little egoic, waking conscious that we're talking in and living in and communicating in now. The unconscious is waiting there. It's communicating in dreams, but it really does seem to require us and want a relationship with us. So try those things, and even if you wake up in the morning without the dream, but you dream, see how you feel. Just note the emotional qualities. Is there, give it a color, or just know anything you can about the dream, and that may be enough. You just jot that down. Right. But once you will remember them. And also, what I also tell them to do, well, do you remember any dream in your lifetime? Yes. Oh, I do, yes. Okay, write those down. Tell me one from your life. Mm-hmm. So by remembering those dreams that that you've had, it seems, again, that you're sort of kind of opening up communication with the unconscious, because dreams aren't like, vegetables in the refrigerator that go bad. They keep. They're eternal. Carl Jung and many folks have worked dreams for a whole lifetime, perhaps lifetimes, but for a whole lifetime. Jung had dreams in childhood. I've certainly had them, and the themes keep showing up, or the same dream but with another nuance.
Well, that makes me think that in our lifetimes we have uncountable number of experiences, but we remember a handful of them, a real small percentage. So the question could be, and I think this is what you're saying, if we remember something, it has significance.
Yes.
It may not be, again, the literal significance of it, although very often it is, but there may be another layer of significance, and like in this other form of consciousness that, occurs to us. If we remember a dream from childhood, and that's 50 years ago, we're talking about something that probably has some significance.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we may consciously choose to notice certain things, but oftentimes something gets our attention. And when dreams get our attention in that way, when things come to our consciousness that way, we can assume it's meant for us. Mm-hmm. And so we pay attention. So it's not just, dreams come from a universal place, but they show up in particular to us. They convey something, communicate something to us, because we have business together, the dream and myself, or ourselves. Now then, again, back to curiosity, courage. I'll use all these C words, curiosity, courage, compassion, this kind of thing, as we do when we have relationships in the waking world with people. So the dreams will communicate, and the recurring dreams really want and insist themselves, and so we pay attention. Or the anxiety dream, we turn toward that which makes us anxious, and sometimes you may need someone to be present with you to do that. Mm-hmm. A dream guide, or if we were in, say, the rainforest somewhere, then we'd have the local shaman or the wise woman, who would have facility and be able to be in that space, create that space to where it's big and safe, or safe enough for one to invite the community of ancestors and spirits, or even ghouls or monsters, this kind of thing, to show up and begin to communicate with us. When at the opening you talked about community, see, Sun Raven and Slow Medicine is about a relationship to the community, and I thought, as you were saying, I went, well, that's it. We do have it. When we sleep at night, we have a vast universal community, and I thought the word commune is in community, and so when we sleep and we wake up with our dreams, we are communing with those or that which has visited us. We have access to an entire community. So working dreams individually or alone, or in the dream groups that we do sometimes there at Sun Raven, is sharing an even greater community that, so far as we know, is boundless. The star, people have dreamed star people, or a stellar cloud spoke to one client, and it was the wisest, deepest part of himself that he could go visit when he needed to get some wisdom and guidance, this kind of thing. Right. So this is communing with all of this in this community.
I think that's a really good message for us as we get toward the end of the show here, which is to reflect this back to the purpose of this hour, which is really to help people just feel a little bit more natural in what they're experiencing. That not everything that happens, even things that are somewhat frightening or unclear at the moment, with curiosity, courage, and compassion, those three important words, we may be able to weave that together into a fabric of our lives that feels a lot healthier.
Yes,
in the body and the mind, all those things. So actually, you're going to be at Sun Raven on Sunday. We have the Slow Medicine Cafe periodically, once a month or so, and it's December 18th. That's the Sunday, from 10 to 2. And Warren, who's the Slow Medicine DreamWeaver, and some of our other associates, astrologer and abundist, and our horticulturalists will all be there, as Robin and I will be also, to share with you in some good times and just a relaxing atmosphere to build that community. And part of that then is to be able to meet Warren, talk to him directly, and he'll be actually making himself available for some mini sessions if that's of interest to you. So, Warren, I want to thank you very much for your time today and in advance for your time on Sunday. I know, as always, I look forward to seeing you and just witnessing your work. I think people find it of great benefit to them, often surprised by how profound it can be. So thank you so much for joining me today on Slow Medicine Radio.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you. I'm looking forward to the weekend, and I hope listeners out there will come on out to Sunraven and let's commune together.
Sounds good. Well, so have a wonderful afternoon.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. And so you've been listening to Slow Medicine Radio, and it's my pleasure to be here with you to talk about things that I know are important. And that the word medicine is a funny word. It's not the conventional thought that you actually take a substance, but it's a way you live your life. And that's what I'm trying to share with you today. Next week, we're going to actually have our slow medicine astrologist to speak about the astrology of life. You know, when you were born and what that might mean. And this is not simply the back of a magazine and a paragraph. This is a really interesting science that has deep roots in history. So we're going to talk about that. And Dimitra Vassiliadis will be at Sunraven on Sunday as well. And she will be back on December 29th, the day of the next new moon, for a new moon ceremony, the evening of the December 29th. And so for more information on that and anything else, go to slowmedicine.org. And for the next week, just take care of yourself. Hopefully I'll see you on Sunday. If not, I'll speak to you next Monday here on Slow Medicine Radio.